This is the Capitol Rundown.
Donald Trump and Republicans made the decision to shut the government down. Would rather do that than provide health care that's affordable.
I had zero communications with the electors in Arizona.
It looks like across at least my state, every single person is looking at their prices doubling. Not just the people who are affected by the big, beautiful bill.
It's all straight ahead. The Capitol Rundown starts now.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Jorma Duran. A lot is happening in Michigan politics, and that includes what's going on in Washington, D.C. And that's where we begin today. The government reopened Wednesday night after the House passed the government funding bill, and President Donald Trump quickly signed it into law. Now, while Republicans take a victory lap, many Democrats are critical of how this process played out. Our Washington correspondent Basil John reports.
It's an honor now to sign this incredible bill and get our country working again.
After 43 days, the government shutdown ended as President Donald Trump put his signature on the bill Wednesday night after it passed out of the House.
On this vote, the yeas are 222, the nays are 209. The bill is passed.
6 Democrats voted with most Republicans to approve the bill, allowing for federal agencies and programs to reopen. House Speaker Mike Johnson blamed the lengthy shutdown on Democrats.
They knew that it would cause that pain to the people, and they did it anyway. They did it for their own selfish purposes, their political purposes, and it was a game they played with real people's lives.
This fight is not over. We're just getting started.
Democrats opposed the short-term spending bill because it left out their priority, extending the expiring tax credit that lowers Affordable Care Act health coverage costs.
Donald Trump and Republicans made the decision to shut the government down, the longest shutdown in American history. Would rather do that than provide health care that's affordable to working class Americans, middle class Americans, and hardworking American taxpayers.
Both of the senators representing Michigan on the Hill, Democrats Gary Peters and Alyssa Slotkin, voted against the resolution to reopen the government. Before the vote, Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin forced a vote on an amendment to the funding bill that would extend Affordable Care Act subsidy funding for 1 year. Senator Slotkin spoke in favor of that amendment.
It looks like across at least my state, every single person is looking at their prices doubling. Not just the people who are affected by the big, beautiful bill, but the bill payers, the people on private health insurance. So today, all we're asking for is a clean 1-year extension. No one says Obamacare is perfect. No one says a clean extension is perfect, but you have pushed people back into a corner. You have said we're going to pay for our tax cuts on the backs of everyday Americans by using their health care as the bail payer. So can we do a 1-year extension, please, so that we can have some kind of conversation, a real conversation that the American people expect people of our stature to be having?
All 53 Republicans voted against that amendment. Meanwhile, Senator Peters says he voted against the overall funding bill because of those same kinds of concerns over health care costs. The senator released a statement saying, in part, "I have repeatedly said I can't get behind a deal that doesn't take immediate action to prevent Michiganders' health care costs from skyrocketing more than they already have." He went on to say Republicans have made it clear they won't even lift a finger to address rising health care costs in this country. Well, later on the Capitol Rundown, our Capitol correspondent will be here for you with his take on current Michigan politics. And up next, same-sex marriage was back in front of the U.S. Supreme Court this past week, as well as in the state capitol. The Capitol Rundown will be right back. The U.S. Supreme Court has rejected a long-shot attempt to overturn the right to same-sex marriage. That lawsuit was brought on by a former Kentucky official jailed over her refusal to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples in 2015. Our Washington correspondent Trevor Shirley is in D.C. with more.
This means the right to marry for same-sex couples will remain the law, as some had worried this lawsuit could form the basis for the court to reconsider its 2015 decision legalizing same-sex marriage. Former Kentucky clerk Kim Davis had asked the justices to overrule the 2015 decision after a jury awarded damages to a couple whom Davis refused to issue a marriage license to back in 2015. That was shortly after the court's landmark ruling giving same-sex couples the right to marry. Davis claimed issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples violated her religious beliefs. She was later jailed for 5 days for refusing to follow the law, which required her to issue those licenses as a state employee. The couple that sued Davis won, requiring her to pay more than $300,000 in emotional damages and attorney's fees. Since then, Davis has been appealing that lawsuit all the way to the Supreme Court. Davis's appeal claimed that she has a private First Amendment religious defense, despite acting as a government official. She tacked on to her appeal a request to overturn the 2015 marriage equality decision outright. The justices rejected her efforts. That effectively ends her attempts to avoid paying those penalties and protects the right for same-sex couples to marry. The justices' decision came with no explanation or dissents. And while this case was being watched closely, several of the conservative justices had recently indicated that there wasn't much appetite on the court to revisit that 2015 decision.
Well, here in Michigan, Democratic State Senator Jeremy Moss is hoping to get rid of the state constitution's ban on same-sex marriage. He introduced a resolution on November 6th to get that question on the ballot in 2026. Now, in 2004, Michiganders voted to deny the right to marriage to same-sex couples. It hasn't been enforced since the landmark U.S. Supreme Court ruling in 2015 allowing that to happen. Nevertheless, the ban is still written into the state constitution, and if same-sex marriage is overturned federally, similar to the right to abortion, Michigan's ban would go back into effect. Over in the State House, Democratic Representative Jason Morgan introduced a similar measure to Moss's earlier in the year. Well, coming up, President Trump just issued a new round of pardons, this time for his allies in trying to overturn a free and fair election. And after the break, our Capitol correspondent will be here for you with a look behind the scenes in Michigan politics. That and much more is coming up next. As the federal government begins to reopen, lawmakers from Michigan are making their thoughts known about the controversial spending bill. The Rundown's Daylin Huff talked to our Capitol correspondent Tim Skubick about that and much more.
It's time to get updated on Michigan politics, and we turn now to our Capitol correspondent Tim Skubick. Tim, the federal government is opening back up and food assistance benefits are being restored. How did Michigan's delegation in the House vote, and what are they saying about it?
Yeah, this is an important story, and thank goodness a lot of people are saying this thing is over. It was a nightmare with lots of people at risk, including people trying to fly and people trying to eat. There's pretty different segments of the population that were impacted. But here's what happened. Basically, all of the Republicans in the Michigan delegation voted yes for this proposal. Our 2 U.S. senators are Democrats. They voted no. And the bulk of the Democratic delegation in the Michigan congressional delegation voted no as well. What they did get was a promise from the Senate Republican leader that he would hold a vote before the January 30th deadline. Now, please be clear here. Promising to hold a vote is one thing. There was no promise of what would be the content to vote upon, and that is yet to be negotiated. And so that's why a bunch of Democrats said this is a pig in a poke. It's a promise without any meat on it, and we shouldn't have done it. But there were 8 Democrats over in the in the U.S. Senate who voted with the Republicans, and 6 Democrats in the House that voted to get the government reopened. So what happens now? More talk. But at least they'll be doing it while government workers are on the job.
Also, Tom Barrett is speaking out about some negative advertisements about him. Are they getting under his skin?
Well, if you watch any television at all in our market, it's kind of hard to miss these negative ads aimed at the incumbent Republican congressperson, Tom Barrett. He was just elected, and already fully a year before the next election, the Democrats are coming after him. This underscores 2 major points. One, this will be a very, very important race vis-a-vis control of the overall House of Representatives in Washington, or put in plain English, If the D's pick up this seat, they have a better shot at controlling the Congress in the new year. And if the Republicans hold on to it, they've got a better shot of holding on to their power. So the Barrett seat is very, very important. And when we spoke to him this week, he conceded that what's going on now is that all this money that's going into all of those TV commercials, and they are everywhere, and he's seen them, not all of them, he says it's an attempt to soften me up for the kill, end quote, in the election in 2026. That's a long ways to go, but this is a strategy that the Democrats are playing, and they think they've got some good issues to use against Mr. Barrett. For his part, he says, you know what, this is a mischaracterization of my stance, and at the end of the day, he believes the people of this district will come to the conclusion that he's done a pretty good job, those negative ads notwithstanding.
Well, coming up on the rundown, President Trump is talking about resuming nuclear weapons testing. But first, we'll have the details on Republican U.S. Senate candidate Mike Rogers' recent statement about his loss to Democrat Alyssa Slotkin. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Last weekend, the Detroit News and other organizations reported that Republican Senate candidate Mike Rogers is claiming his 2024 loss to Democrat Alyssa Slotkin happened because of a single van load of ballots showing up at a counting center in Detroit. Speaking at a GOP event in Detroit on October 7th, Mr. Rogers said he lost the vote by 0.3% after that van arrived with ballots at 5:30 in the morning. He made a similar claim while speaking at an event in Muskegon on October 17th.
100,000 people walked into the poll, they voted for Donald Trump, and they turned around and left. They didn't vote for one other Republican on the ticket. If we'd have gotten 9,000 of those folks, we would have won. That works out to about 232 votes per county. That's how short we were. And it did so happen that 5:30 in the morning we were winning. A van in Detroit showed up with ballots. We ended up losing that thing by about 17,000 votes.
The Rundown reached out to the Rogers campaign for a comment, but we haven't heard back as of this recording. After President Donald Trump lost the 2020 election and made false claims that it was rigged, Mr. Rogers wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post criticizing the president for those claims. Speaking of the president and election results, on Sunday night he quietly issued pardons to several people involved in his attempts to overturn the 2020 election. Marvin Scott has the details.
I'm not going to answer the question because I'm still under examination.
Not any longer. As far as President Trump is concerned, in a proclamation, Trump granted a full, complete, and unconditional pardon to the former New York mayor who served as the president's personal attorney.
Obviously, they've got an important vote.
Trump also pardoned his former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, and attorney John Eastman, a close advisor who faced state charges of trying to influence electors.
I had zero communications with the electors in Arizona.
Also exonerated was Sidney Powell, an attorney who promoted conspiracy theories about a stolen election. Among the dozens named in these latest pardons are individuals who participated in the January 6th riot at the Capitol. Presidential pardons apply only to federal crimes. None of Trump's allies named has been charged in federal cases, though some still face various state prosecutions, many of which are in limbo. Dan Cassino, professor of government and politics at Fairleigh Dickinson University, feels these pardons are simply symbolic.
And so by pardoning everyone who was involved in the attempts to overturn the election, he's making the case that that attempt to overturn the election was itself legitimate. The election was stolen, and therefore the attempt to overturn the election was itself an act of patriotism rather than an attempted coup.
Notably, President Trump does not himself appear on the list of pardons. While it's something he's mentioned before, it's an untested legal question of whether a president can pardon themselves. The president didn't comment on the pardons, but White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt released a statement saying, quote, "These great Americans were persecuted and put through hell by the Biden administration for challenging an election, which is the cornerstone of democracy." Still to come, the danger posed by nuclear weapons is once again front and center as President Trump recently made statements about resuming testing. See right there. Welcome back. President Donald Trump has now asked his administration to test nuclear weapons. Our Washington correspondent Vinay Simlot has the story.
The U.S. hasn't detonated nuclear weapons in over 30 years, and last week President Donald Trump posted a video reiterating his call for nuclear testing to resume.
Because of other countries' testing programs, I've instructed the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis.
The Department of Energy oversees the U.S.'s nuclear stockpiles. Secretary Chris Wright tells me the nuclear testing won't include full-scale detonations.
We understand the physics actually at the last moment of the implosion.
Instead, he says the Department of Energy will make sure the weapons work reliably and effectively as scientists try to modernize the U.S.'s nuclear arsenal.
Are there discussions to actually do nuclear detonation testing here in the U.S.?
I won't get into any details here. There's all different kinds of testing, and of course we're discussing all different other ideas for testing.
In 1996, the U.S. signed on to the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Congress never ratified it. Still, every administration has followed it, and so have most countries.
We have more nuclear weapons than anybody. We don't do testing.
The United Nations says North Korea last conducted nuclear tests in 2017. China and Russia both stopped in the 90s. But last week, Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered his government to submit plans to resume nuclear testing in response to President Trump's statements.
We need to be meaningfully stronger than our adversaries. That's how you keep peace.
Every country with nuclear weapons except North Korea has followed the test ban treaty. In Washington, I'm Vinay Simlot.
And if you're interested in getting more political news from Michigan and Washington, we've got just the thing. You can sign up for our Capitol Rundown newsletter. It's just one email each week, and you can get it by pointing your cell phone camera at the screen right now. It'll take you to the sign-up page, or you could head to WLNS.com/newsletters. And that's our show for this week. Thanks for watching the Capitol Rundown.